Juste une petite remarque, vous avez qualifié de...
I have a little comment. You have just said that the legal system in Russia works very effectively.
Я так не говорил.
I didn't say that. I said that while there are problems still present there, the judicial system is evolving and is proving its worth.
Dmitry Medvedev was more pessimistic. Legal nihilism was the expression he used. Between those two extremes, where is the truth?
Правда в том, что вы плохо слышали.
The truth is, you didn't hear it right. He was speaking about political nihilism not in courts, but in the public consciousness. Perhaps it does exist, but it's not the fault of the public consciousness. It's a result of the fact that the law enforcement and state management, including the judicial branch, functioned rather poorly in defending the interests of the people. Thus, naturally, the people had a disrespect and mistrust towards the judicial system. He's quite right in saying so, which means our task is to improve this system. And this is what we have been doing and are going to continue to do. Much remains to be done to make the system work 100% for the benefit of the people. I don't know if that can be achieved at all, or if there is a perfect system anywhere, but it's the one we have.
You have mentioned the situation in Dagestan. You say it is special. There are several ethnic groups living on this small territory in the Caucasus. We see that the situation in Chechnya has normalized over the last few years, but it seems that the situation in Ingushetia and Dagestan has worsened considerably. Mr. Prime Minister, what do you think is the key problem in those two territories?
The situation in the Chechen Republic has indeed improved, and it improved due to several circumstances, the main one being the fact that the Chechen people have made a certain choice for themselves towards the development of their republic within the Russian Federation. We see and know this. We saw the reaction of the Chechen people to attempts to implant untraditional forms of Islam into the minds of the local population, first of all. This is what it all started with, resisting Wahhabism. In fact, it is a normal branch of Islam, and there is nothing terrible in it. But it is those extremist trends within it that were trying to be implanted into the consciousness of the Chechen people. And the people realized that someone from outside was fighting not for their interests, but trying to use people as a tool to loosen the Russian Federation as a major and significant player on the international arena, and that would bring only suffering to the people. The awareness of this factor was the main thing in terms of stabilization. This was what it started with. And it became a fact when we understood that the population's mood has changed. We passed on the main part of the responsibility, both in law enforcement sector and economy. It seemed impossible that a defense minister in the government led by Maskhadov could become a member of today's Chechen parliament. Now it's a fact. And it created the necessary political conditions for the reconstruction of Grozny and for immediate steps in the economy. As far as Dagestan and Ingushetia are concerned, we see and are well aware of what is going on there. There are indeed disputes and conflicts of interests, but it is not about political interests, but first and foremost economic, as well as some political conflicts, but not related to any separatist movements. It is about an internal political struggle within the republics themselves. What is the priority for the Caucasus as a whole, and the republics you mentioned? First of all, it's the restoration of the social and economic sectors. Many people live below the poverty line there, most suffering from unemployment, which is particularly bad among young people. So we have adopted a program of development for southern Russia, which concerns the North Caucasus republics first of all. This program envisages huge investments into the economy and the social sector as a priority. I count on it to be fulfilled successfully.
As for Beslan and Nordost, do you think the problem of Chechnya could have been solved the other way round?
No, I'm sure that if we had tried to solve it differently, it would all have lasted until now.
In terms of human rights organizations speaking about violations and investigations, is transparency possible in the future?
We could have counted on the more efficient work of our security units and security services, but it is quite obvious that we had to suppress those attempts to destabilize the region. Any country of the world, any country, as soon as it yields to terrorists, it eventually suffers more losses than those incurred during special operations. In the long run, it leads to the disintegration of the state and increases the number of victims.
What do you expect from France's chairmanship of the EU?
Франция наш традиционный партнер.
France is our long-time partner and a reliable one.
Мы
We have
всегда
always talked about the
говорили даже о
strategic
стратегическом
partnership
партнерстве
between
между
France and Russia,
Францией и
and I agree with this
Россией. И
definition.
я согласен с таким определением.
France has always had,
Франция
and I hope will
проводила
continue to
и
have,
проводит,
an
надеюсь, и
independent
будет
foreign
проводить
policy. It's
независимую
in their
внешнюю
blood.
политику.
They won't be
Это,
dictated to.
мне кажется,
And
в
any
крови
French leader should
французов.
always
Трудно
keep this
что-то
in mind.
навязывать со стороны.
We can see this independence today. We
Любой
value it very much,
лидер
and
Франции
that's why we
всегда должен
expect
будет
a
с этим
lot from
считаться.
France's EU chairmanship.
И мы
First of all,
сегодня видим
we expect
эту
a
независимость.
constructive
Мы это
dialogue
очень
aimed
высоко
at
ценим.
creating the legal
И
basis for our relations with EU.
Поэтому мы многого ждем
I'm
от
talking about
председательства
our
Франции в
fundamental
Евросоюзе.
partnership treaty,
Прежде всего,
which, as you
ждем
know, has
конструктивного
expired.
диалога, направленного
However,
на
this is not
создание
a legal
необходимой
vacuum,
правовой
because
базы
existing
нашего
procedures
взаимодействия
make
с
it possible for
Евросоюзом.
us to
Я,
prolong
конечно,
it
сейчас
every
говорю
year, but of course,
об
it needs to be
основополагающем
renewed.
акте
We have said many times
наших
that we are
отношений.
interested
Срок
in
прежнего,
signing
как вы
a
знаете,
new agreement.
закончился. Правда,
This is
никакого
equally as important to
правового
our
вакуума не
European
создается,
partners
потому
as it is
что
to us.
существующими
So I
процедурами
expect that the
предусмотрено,
French chairmanship
что каждый год мы
will lead
можем
to
его
the
продлевать,
renewal of
но,
our
конечно, он
relations
требует
and to
обновления.
joint efforts
Мы
in
уже
developing our
многократно
mutual
говорили,
interests.
что мы в этом заинтересованы в подписании нового договора.
L'un des dossiers qui préoccupe beaucoup la planète en ce moment est celui du nucléaire iranien.
Do you think the Iranians will create a nuclear bomb? Did you discuss this with Nicolas Sarkozy?
Parlé avec Nicolas Sarkozy hier.
Да, мы упоминали эту проблему. Я не думаю, что иранцы стремятся к...
Yes, we mentioned the problem. I don't think the Iranians are looking to make a nuclear bomb. We have no reason to believe this. The Iranian people are very proud and independent. They are trying to implement their legal right to develop peaceful nuclear technologies. I should say that formally, Iran hasn't violated any rules. It even has the right to carry out enrichment. It only takes a quick glance at the relevant documents to confirm this. There were some claims that Iran hadn't revealed all its programs to the IAEA. This is what we need to clear up. But to a large extent, Iran has revealed its nuclear programs. I repeat, there is no official basis for legal claims against Iran. But I have always openly told our Iranian colleagues that we take into account that Iran is not isolated in a vacuum. It is part of a very dangerous and volatile region. They should keep this in mind and avoid aggravating their neighbors and the international community, and should take steps to convince the international community that they have no secret plans. We have worked in a very tight cooperation with our partners in Iran and within the framework of the six-party talks, and we will continue to do this in the future.
Никаких тайных помыслов у иранского руководства нет.
Did you convince Sarkozy that Iran doesn't have a military nuclear program?
Du fait qu'il n'y a pas de programme militaire nucléaire.
Я не ставил перед собой в ходе этой...
I did not come with this aim. I can assure you that Sarkozy is no less informed than the President of Russia, and especially the former President of Russia. We didn't discuss this part of the problem. We just noted that we should continue our work to solve it.
Мы говорили о том, что она пока существует, и нужно вместе работать для того, чтобы...
Si un jour, pardon pour finir, si un jour
If one day you find out that Iran is creating a bomb, will this be a problem for Russia?
fabrique une bombe, est-ce que cela poserait un problème à la Russie?
If. There can be no ifs in politics. If we do discover this, then we will decide how to act.
Mais est-ce que pour finir sur cette question,
To finish off this topic, let's talk about principles. Do you think that Iran, as a nation, has the right to a military nuclear program?
nucléaire militaire?
We are against, this is our principle, we are against the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. We think it's a very dangerous trend. And most importantly, it's not in the interest either of Iran or the region as a whole, because the use of nuclear weapons in such a small region as the Middle East is nothing short of a suicide. In whose interest could a nuclear bomb possibly be used? Palestine? If nuclear weapons were used, Palestine would cease to exist. We remember the Chernobyl tragedy. All it takes is for the wind to blow in the wrong direction, and that's it. Who could possibly benefit from this? We think it's counterproductive. This has always been our position, and I hope this opinion will be shared by President Medvedev as well. We will use any means possible to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. That's why we proposed an international program of enrichment, because Iran is only a part of the problem. A lot of countries are on the threshold of the peaceful use of nuclear energy, and this means that they will need enrichment technology. And if they create their own closed cycle to solve the problem, there will always be the suspicion that they could produce military-grade uranium. It is difficult to control. That's why we propose carrying out the enrichment on the territory of those countries which are beyond suspicion, because they already possess nuclear weapons. All those countries will get a guarantee that they will receive the uranium they need and be able to send spent fuel for recycling. It is possible to create such a system, and it will be reliable and safe.
Why is Ukraine and Georgia's NATO accession dangerous?
First of all, we are generally against NATO expansion. Let's remember how NATO was created. In 1949, the fifth paragraph of the Washington Treaty. It was done as a defensive measure during a face-off with the Soviet Union to defend against a possible threat. The Soviet Union used to say that it would not attack anybody. Western countries said the opposite, but nevertheless, officially, it was done to defend against the Soviet Union. There is no Soviet Union anymore. There is no threat, but the organization remains. The question is, against whom are you allied? What is it all for? Okay, some say NATO should fight modern threats. But what are these threats? The spread of nuclear weapons, terrorism, epidemics, international crime, drugs. Is it possible to tackle these threats as a closed military alliance? No. These problems can be solved only on the basis of wide cooperation. Not on the basis of a military bloc, but on the basis of global cooperation. On the basis of an honest, open, and joint struggle against these problems. And expanding the bloc is only creating new borders in Europe, new Berlin walls. This time they are invisible, but no less dangerous. It limits the power of joint efforts against common threats, because it leads to distrust. It's obstructive. Secondly, not less important, we all know how decisions are made in NATO. Military political blocs limit the sovereignty of any member country. Inside, barrack-like discipline appears, and the decisions are at first made, we all know where, in one of the leading countries of the bloc, and then legitimized and dispersed. For example, the decision on missile defense. At first the decision was made, and then it was discussed in Brussels, only after we criticized it. And we're afraid that if these countries get into NATO today, tomorrow there might appear some offensive rocket systems which will pose a threat to us. Nobody will ask them. The rockets will appear whatever. And what are we going to do then? We always talk about limiting arms in Europe, but while Western countries have been talking about it, we have done it in our country. And in return, 2 military bases appeared near our borders, and soon we might get 2 new missile defense sites in Poland and the Czech Republic.